So I'm a big fan. Like I said, we bring Supercross World Championships in. Like I said, Tony Hawk's a dear friend, Travis Pastrana. We were texting back and forth. Shaun White, good friends, Apollo Ono. So when you look at a lot of the relationships and friends that we have, we're in that space. And I think it's great. I like to have some diversity and some different things coming to the state. I kind of get bored easy too. And so this has been really fun to bring to the state and partner with all of our friends. But I think, Red Bull, Rampage, one of the most iconic events in the world down in Southwest Utah. We partner on that. So when you start understanding more what we do, it's really a pretty interesting story to tell. But I love having these guys here. I mean, Tony Hawk, when I was with him 3 weeks ago, skateboarding and the kids and that whole skateboard community, we've embraced that action sports world, and this really is kind of part of that world, right?
Just one from me. When we come here, we always ask the fighters about the elevation and what they're doing to prepare for it. It's kind of a unique twist on their fight week, right? Do you kind of get a little kick out of the Salt Lake City being, it's unique, these guys have to come and it has to have special preparation for them to fight here?
Well, yeah, ask the Supercross riders, right? They've got motorcycles and they've got dirt bikes, and so they're trying to adjust for elevation too. But on the other hand, you'll see a lot of training be done here because, you train high, compete low, right? So I think that makes part of the interesting dynamic here, and it maybe gives a little bit more of a challenge to the athletes. But hey, they're professionals, they're the top in the world. And if that's the level that you're at, I don't care if it's in the NBA, the Utah Jazz, who are dear friends and partners, if it's somebody in the Olympic space, part of what you do is you travel and you compete in different places. I played professional tennis. So I understand that, and so I hope it's a test for them. I hope it's a challenge, and maybe they're putting in to try to acclimate to that. That's okay. That's that's what they should do, right?
What can the Utah Sports Commission do to get the liquor laws changed, Ryan? Couldn't buy cold beer at the liquor store last night. It was a little frustrating.
Well, believe it or not, that has changed a lot over the last about 5 years, and I think that's something that it continues to evolve. It's not something that is just sitting there that people haven't noticed that. So I do get that question once in a while, by the way, but just know that's something we're all addressing. The hospitality community is addressing it. The governor, I have the governor on my board with the speaker and the president of the Senate, and then business leaders. We're not a state entity, and they're pretty progressive. I mean, this is a pretty progressive event, right? To put resources and bring into the state. Some of the motocross stuff, some of the things with the tatted skateboarders and that. So like I said, I think the story is it's a lot more diverse and it's a lot more dynamic than maybe some may think, right? I'm not skirting it, by the way.
It was a far better answer than I deserved. Appreciate it.
Just as a side note, have you heard any rumors or any new developments with the MLB expansion chase here in Utah?
I'm on that collaboration. They have a group of us that are involved, and just keep telling the story. And the interesting thing about the UFC, when you look at the global reach, it helps tell the story, right? All of these major events that we're hosting tell a story for us that we're a great destination for franchise. I mean, we hear NHL talk here, of course, the Olympic stuff, UFC, World Finals and Supercrosses, Ironman. So when you look at all of the success we've had, I mean, over 1,000 events. We had 78 events we partnered on last year, the Sports Commission in the state. So that's more than one a week. That all rolls up to tell the story. So I don't, whether it's NHL, whether it's MLB, it tells a story. Having people like Ryan Smith involved can get in and maybe have a different perspective, which is great. So this is just another step in telling our story that also dovetails, whether it's an NHL team, MLB, or other things we're doing. The Olympic world knows UFC. Who knows if UFC makes it into the Olympics sometime, right? And so we have some pretty interesting contacts in a lot of different places that maybe dovetail into the UFC more than you might think, on the surface.
Hi.
Hi.
So for the NBA All-Stars, there were certain players that were not too happy with the nightlife in Salt Lake City. How are we making that change for the UFC, and what are those pre-events that are going to make the full fan experience?
Well, and again, it's a lot of this is evolving. It's like the liquor laws that we just spoke about. And I think Salt Lake City, like I said, I don't think some of the events that have come here, NBA, Olympics, other things we're working on, it hasn't been that big of an impediment so far. And like I said, we're embracing diversity. We're embracing all of these different groups. I mean, Tony Hawk, if you talk to him about Salt Lake City and the experiences he's having, a lot of the skateboard athletes and that, that really doesn't come up so much, because when athletes come, most of the time they're fighting. Now, the fans may want a different experience, right? But most of the athletes that are fighting in a competition like this, man, they're like when I played professional tennis. You go in, you play, and you don't have a lot of time other than focusing on what you're there to do. We haven't had a lot of people complain about that, but generally speaking, what you're kind of looking for is here. May take a little more looking or becoming more familiar with the place. I mean, a lot of the major cities you go to, you've been to a number of times, so they already know. I think as they come back here and they find out what's here, and again, we've got a very progressive leadership in the state government, people like Ryan, others, and we evolve, and we know we need to evolve in some areas. So we don't just kind of look at it and kind of say, yeah, it's not a big deal. But I think the more you discover Salt Lake City and Utah, the more you will find those kinds of things. But again, if you go to a city for one time, pretty hard, right? Because you guys, well, I don't know if you're here for business. Anybody here for business? I'm just kidding. So I think as you come into a city, you'll start looking at it and saying, all right, there's a place I'd like to go. Hey, that was from last year. But it's all becoming familiar with the locations. I go to Vegas. I got really good friends in Vegas. And, there are places I go and places I don't go, right? Just becoming familiar with the place you're going. Does that answer your question in a roundabout way? Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys. Have fun.
Change that liquor license, John, and become an ambassador.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Nowitzki. For the UFC, I oversee our anti-doping program, independently administered by USADA. It's widely recognized as the most comprehensive in professional sport. A few years ago, we looked at the program and said it's unfortunate that the news that comes out of anti-doping is generally bad news. It's usually when an athlete tests positive. But if you look at our program, we're approaching now 30,000 individual tests, and with a positive percentage rate of less than 1%. And we said to ourselves, that's the news that we need to get out there, the positive news, because it's overwhelmingly positive. So we started giving recognition and presentations like this for athletes that reached milestones, 25 clean tests, 50 clean tests, they get a jacket. And today with Dustin Poirier, 75 clean tests. I was talking to Dustin earlier. He has now overtaken, of active UFC fighters, the most successful tests. Since Amanda Nunes retired, she was ahead of him, and now it's Dustin Poirier in the lead. And I usually tell a quick story to personalize these presentations, and Dustin's is the best story that I have, bar none. I told this story when he got his 50 jacket, but it was in the locker room, kind of in front of family and friends. But Dustin had just defeated Conor McGregor. It was the night of the fight. I was home in Las Vegas, and my phone rings, and I look, and it's Dustin Poirier, and I say, it's 4 hours after he just beat Conor. Must be a butt dial or something. So pick it up, and hey, Dustin, what's up? He goes, hey, Jeff. He goes, USADA collected a sample from me today at the fight, and I forgot to declare one supplement I was using. Completely benign supplement. I think it was tested and certified. But that's the level of attention and care and detail that this guy, makes to be successful under this program. The biggest win of his career, one of the biggest wins in the history of the UFC, and he's called.
Lucky for me, like coming up earlier in the gyms I was in as a young fighter, it wasn't around me, so I never got introduced to that type of stuff. So it was never a part of my, surroundings. And it's all good. It's cool to be recognized for not doing steroids.
All right, now let's talk about the fight. I mean, I don't even know how many years it's been nothing but big fight after big fight after big fight. Is there still, I know you said you do this because you get that excitement, you get that fear, but like fight week, is there still that nerves? Is there still that excitement? Or at this point, is this is just who I am and what I do?
A little bit of both. This is who I am and what I do. I mean, walking this walk, coming in here, talking to you guys, checking in with the UFC. This might be like the 30th time I've done it. And it's just part of the process. It feels normal to me, but what never goes away is those feelings and that anxiety all week, prepping, thinking about the fight when I lay down at night. That never goes away. That's always there, man.
Yeah. I've heard you say a few times lately, like, I don't have to fight anymore. Like, my family's good. Knowing that, has the family ever said, hey, Dustin, you don't have to fight anymore. Could you please not?
Yeah, my mom told me that after the second fight in Abu Dhabi. She was like, I think it's enough, you've done it enough. But nah, this is what I do, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Talk about prepping for this fight. Like I said, it's been nothing but big fights, right? But a fight that is going to be a battle, that you had before and was a battle, right? I mean, is there a different mentality or a different approach knowing, like, I'm probably not going to get out of there and get out in 5 minutes. It's going to be a battle.
Yeah, when they called me, because we were talking about doing this fight, a few months ago when they first called me and started talking about Justin potentially being the opponent. Those butterflies, that anxiety, that hit me right away, and I was like, we got to do this. This is the one. And it was 5 years ago I beat him. He's done great things. I've done great things. And we were just on a collision course, it seemed, to do it again. Number 2, number 3, number 1's fighting the champ. So it just makes sense, I think, in the division as well.
It would be a huge fight without a title on it, regardless, because of who you guys are. But the BMF title, like,
that was thrown on kind of last minute. Like when we first started talking about the fight, that wasn't brought up.
Yeah. Is that fun at all? I mean, did you care? Or what does that mean to you?
It's cool. It's cool. It's a legacy fight. That's what my wife told me. She said this about legacy. Put this BMF belt up on my mantle. When I'm gone from the sport, I can talk back about, the second BMF in UFC history fight. And it's just, it's history, it's legacy, it's fun. But even to have your name in the hat to be considered for a fight like this is a special thing,
Last thing for me, I mean, I think at this point in your career, it doesn't really matter what stakes you're fighting for. People are going to want to tune in and watch you fight, right? But that in mind, I mean, that title, like, is that still what's top of mind? And are you viewing this as, hey, number 1 contender fight, I fight the winner of October?
Yeah, I haven't been told directly that the winner is fighting for the belt, but I assume that. But, I say this every time I sit up here in front of you guys. I don't want to look forward that far because Saturday needs to happen. And it's a crazy thing we do. But the plan is to get my hand raised, and then when the smoke clears, we'll assess the next fight and where the division's at and what happens in Abu Dhabi and all. It's just so much things that need to happen and that are going on that is just noise until Saturday happens. So I'm fully focused on 25 minutes with Justin, and it's wartime, man.
Dustin, when you left the arena last time after fighting Justin, did part of you think, I'm going to have to fight this guy again? That fight was too good and the fans are going to want to see it.
No, it didn't. I actually sat next to Justin at one of the pay-per-views in Vegas, and we were, talking, chopping it up, and I told him, I was like, dude, I don't want to do that again. I told him that. I was like, I don't want to do that again, and here we are about to throw hands. But I honestly, throughout the 5 years since the first fight, I didn't see it coming.
You mentioned those pre-fight anxieties, right, and fight week. That's always going to be there. But knowing what you went through the last time and knowing what's waiting for you on Saturday, is it almost worse? Is this fight week like, oh, God, okay, Saturday is really going to be a rough one? Or are you just, hey, it's a fight, I get in there, I do what I do?
Both. Like, I trust myself to make a way through the roughness, but it's going to get rough, Like I said before, adversity will present itself in this fight, but I trust myself to get off the stool, keep myself safe, find the openings, pick my shots. I've matured a lot in this sport, and I think you're going to see it Saturday.
This time we're a bit higher up in the air. Did you do anything special to prepare for the elevation?
I had a company called Higher Peak Altitude Training come in and send me a tent and a machine that you can sleep at altitude. So I did the last 2 weeks at 5,000 feet in South Florida, and came out here Friday morning. And my house I'm at here is an Airbnb. It's like 5,100 feet, so I'm about 1,000 feet or so above where we're going to fight. And I hope that's enough, but I don't get tired, man. 5,000 feet ain't enough.
Thank you.
Justin, is there, I asked Dustin this too, because he's only had one rematch in his entire career. You've had a few and you've won them all. Is there any difference in preparation, not specifically for Justin, but just rematches in general leading into a fight compared to when you're fighting a fresh face?
It depends how long, well, this is my opinion, obviously, but it depends how long they are between each other. Me and Justin fought 5 years ago, so this is I'm win about this like it's a new fight. I'm not going to break down the footage and dwell on that too much because we both changed so much and had our successes and our losses and, changed things and just got better in the sport. We didn't waste 5 years. We're both better fighters now. Other fights, like the Eddie Alvarez fight, was a lot closer together. So we did go back and watch a lot of things he did. The Max Holloway fight was a long time between as well. So I try to look at it as a brand new fight.
Earlier today, Justin was on, I think it was like Pardon the Interruption or something like that, and he said that he knows you're ready and he's ready, but I think his words were, I think our families are terrified for this rematch. So when you told your family, like, I'm going to have to go rematch Justin Gaethje, what did they say?
Well, my wife kind of knew, like whenever I told her, she kind of knew, but it's an unsaid agreement. It's an unwritten agreement. She knows when I go into that zone, and she knows what this is, and especially a fight like this. Everyone knows, not even family. People at home who follow the sport knows what this is, and I want to go there. I think that's where I do my best work, and the fact that like the fans and Justin, he doesn't like go out of his way to portray that, but he's kind of got that aura about him now as the chaos and the most violent and all that. But I really am that, and he knows that. So let's go there.
We asked Justin this too because Jorge is probably going to wrap the belt around the winner, and he said to him that makes it a little more sweeter knowing that he's taking it away from ATT. Does it make it a little more sweeter knowing that you're going to be fighting to keep it at ATT?
Yeah, it's great to keep that title at American Top Team. We're going to put it next to the one George brought to the gym and keep the tradition alive. Masvidal's a buddy of mine, and proud of that guy. The resurgence he had in his career, from backyards to being a superstar, one of the biggest names in the sport, he showed the rest of us that if you just stay the path, keep hustling, keep grinding, good things will happen.
Dustin, right here. When Justin was in here earlier, he said he thinks his best chance of winning this fight is to be more technical than the last one and more technical than you. We know how good your boxing is and how much you embrace the technique. Is that a mistake from him on that mindset? Do you think he needs to turn this into more of a brawl to give himself a chance to win?
Yeah, I do. If he wants to technically kickbox with me and grapple with me, I think his best chances are to catch me being crazy and landing a shot. If he tries to take his time and be methodical, I'm going to show you levels for sure.
And who do you think wins the fight between Islam and Charles when they rematch later this year?
Man, I know I'm 100% sure that Charles didn't show his true potential in that fight. You know, I know from experience that the guy is good. I thought he really underperformed, and we've seen him do that in the past, and we kind of, everyone, including myself, thought he was past that, and he kind of broke through that, not to say quitting, but broke through those times he stumbles in there, and he really found his groove. But in that fight, he kind of looked like the old Charles. It looked like he didn't want to be in there. If he has his mental together, I think he'll give Islam as big of a test as anybody ever has.
Is there a matchup out of those two that you would relish having more? You know, Islam obviously the guy who's had a long winning streak here, but then the chance at revenge against Charles.
Even guys who beat me, man, I've never really, even like Conor or anybody when there's bad blood and stuff, I never really like sit back and think about the revenge. So whoever.
Dustin over here. You are one of the longest tenured title contenders still in the picture, and I'm just curious, what's kind of been the secret to your longevity in your eyes after all these years?
Remaining a student, like not just showing up to do martial arts when a fight camp gets announced or when a fight gets announced, being in the gym back home with young fighters, helping them fight, get ready for fights on the local scene, being part of jiu-jitsu tournaments, doing jiu-jitsu, just being in gyms, being a student of martial arts, and even when I'm not in the gym, I'm watching fights, breaking stuff down. I just love combat sports, and maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. You got the chance to be a desk analyst for UFC 287. What was that like? Was there anything that kind of surprised you about being, behind the desk rather than in front of the people?
It was a different experience for sure. Like I was nervous on the way there. I was like, I don't want to blow this. This is live TV. There are no redos or edits. But when I showed up to the arena and then it's all the same people I've been dealing with my whole career in the UFC, behind the scenes, I felt right at home.
Yeah. When it comes to these fights, you've talked a lot about leading up to this fight, putting on the war hat and really getting into these barn burner type fights. Did you always love those, or did you have to kind of gain that attribute after years and years of just insane fights over the course of your career?
I mean, like when I first started fighting, definitely didn't look forward to being in wars. I didn't think about it, but I just embraced it over the years. So many crazy fights, and find out when you're in that kind of war, the other person's going through it too, and I just feel like I can suffer more than these guys.
Hey, Dustin. There's this crazy stat, and I was just wondering if you had seen it. Both you and Justin, since your last fight, have a 6-2 record, 4 finishes, two decisions, a win over Chandler. Only losses are to Khabib and Charles. Like when you hear that, like, is it just kind of like destiny that this fight was supposed to happen?
Yeah, that's what I said. It's a collision course. When looking back at the stats, I think we even have the same amount of letters in our name. It's crazy. It's the battle of the Austins, man.
And finally, your old pal Nate Diaz fights next weekend against Jake Paul. How do you think he does?
Man, dude, Nate does have good boxing, but it's unorthodox and it works well for MMA, small gloves, pity pat punches, and that range. But with boxing gloves, things are different. Timing's different, range is a little bit different, and Jake is a big, athletic young kid. If I had to put money on it, I would put it on Jake.
Do you think the size is going to be a big factor? And the narrative is right. If Jake doesn't knock Nate out, he's going to gas and Nate's going to take over. Like, do you kind of think that narrative's correct?
For sure. I mean, that could happen. It definitely could happen. I've been around both guys. Jake is a lot bigger than Nate, a lot more explosive, has the money and the amenities and to put the best people around him and really lock himself away and work on the art. He hasn't been doing it for that long, but all it takes is one punch from a guy like that, that size.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Dustin, so I know athletes talk about like training and coming to Utah and elevation, but what about like the atmosphere? Have you heard from any of the athletes that have been here already from last year about what to expect coming to Utah, or anything that you were surprised to when you got here?
No, I didn't talk to anybody who fought on the previous card, but I just came out. It feels normal, on Sunday I ran 5 miles at the park here. We've got some mountain trails behind the house we're at. Walked those a few times. I don't really, did a few workouts so far. I don't really feel a whole lot different.
Dustin back here. You get back to the community quite a bit, and just recently with the young boy that survived cancer and everything. What does it mean to have an impact?
His name's Alden.
Alden, thank you. Yeah. What does it mean for you to have an impact on kids like that and be able to, continue to put out positive energy like that?
It's important for me, man. Just realizing the platform I have, that people are listening, and for this particular one, he was a fan, so that was real cool. I had sent him a video like a year and a half, 2 years ago when he first went in for chemo, and then it came back around, Make-A-Wish granted his wish, and he came out to the gym. So that's really cool. And I'm just thankful that I'm in a spot where I can do that, and I recognize I'm in a spot that I can do that, because we're all fighting for something, and why not? Sometimes what I go out there and fight for is more than silver. It's worth more than silver and gold. It's about emotions. It's about drive. It's about a lot of things other than just a fist fight.
Something you look to continue to do once you're done?
Yeah, for sure. My foundation isn't going anywhere. We're going to continue to set goals and accomplish those goals. And as soon as I get out of the cage, fly back to Louisiana Wednesday, I'll be handing out backpacks and school supplies and food to families in need in Lafayette, Louisiana. So it doesn't stop. The good fight doesn't stop.
Dustin, just to go back to Nate, I know you wanted to fight him for a long time, and he's saying that this is pretty much like a one and done for him outside the UFC. He wants to be back. Would you still be interested in doing that, or have you moved past it?
Dude, like I always say, I don't look too far ahead and book myself in fights that aren't even realistic or a possibility until other things happen. But if he comes back, I'll beat him up.
And we know your record in the rematch is everything. What's the record in the ping pong this week?
Man, I've been getting whipped. My buddy's down a few $1,000. He's going to have to take a loan out when he gets home.
Get the L's out of the way now.
Yeah. And you can get it too if you come up to the house.
One final one for me. Brent Allen's been asking the UFC for a UFC Fight Night Louisiana. He says you're the only other fighter that could headline ahead of him. Do you want to fight in Louisiana before you're done?
I fought whenever last time UFC went to New Orleans. I fought at the Smoothie King Center. I'd love to fight there. I fought in the Superdome when I was an amateur fighter back in I'd love to go back to New Orleans.
Just want to ask you one quick follow-up. You're one of the biggest stars in the sport right now. You're fighting on the biggest stages, right? But I wonder, it just struck me, kid from Lafayette, Fightville, to sleeping in an altitude tent that some tech company is sending to you. Are there small moments like that where you just step back and go man, I never saw any of this happening?
Yeah, when I do look back on how since the beginning here, borrowing my mom's car to go to the gym and get beat up, waiting for my wife to get off of work so I can use her car, riding a bicycle to the gym. Man, that's what hard work does, though. It pays off.
What was it like fighting in the Superdome?
It was awesome, man. It was awesome. It wasn't like a crazy big crowd because it was just a car show. Most people were on the floor, but it was cool because we got to warm up in the football locker rooms, and it's such a big place to get from the locker room to the cage. We had to jump on a golf cart.
What was that walk like to the cage?
I was just telling you, we took a golf cart. It was so far. Thank you, guys.
Trevor, the way the schedule has worked out for you, you've been a part of some pretty big fight cards throughout your UFC career. Is it still like kind of special when you get to these moments, or is this just like, hey, I'm just used to going to the big arenas, the big pay-per-views?
Honestly, I have, especially this card.